She was an exchange student who had just settled into her new routine in Melbourne. But one night, a phone call to her family went silent mid-conversation, without warning or explanation, just a brief cry that cut off mid-sentence. When the family member on the other end tried calling back, the line connected, but no one answered. Minutes turned into hours, with the phone still connected to the network but showing no movement or response. By morning, the unanswered messages had turned into a police matter. Friends retraced her usual route, and university staff confirmed she had missed her scheduled class. Investigators later determined that her phone activity, transport data, and final location had all stopped within the same short window, just a few minutes in the middle of the night, along a familiar route she had taken countless times before. The question that followed was simple but unrelenting. How does a routine journey, the kind taken by thousands of students every night, end up in a disappearance with no traces?
You are watching Crime Insider. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video.
On the morning of January 16, 2019, Victoria Police had classified the case as a missing person report. An exchange student who hadn't returned home overnight, whose phone was still active on the network but showing no movement, investigators began with the routine. She lived near La Trobe University in Bundoora and commuted by tram almost every evening. Campus records showed she had attended class the previous afternoon. Her friends confirmed she had spent the evening in the city before boarding the Route 86 tram toward home just after midnight. According to police briefings, her sister overseas reported the last contact at 12:03 a.m., a short call that ended abruptly. The phone stayed connected for several minutes before the signal went idle. When attempts to call back failed, the family contacted authorities through university staff. By 7 a.m., a passerby walking near the Polaris shopping center in Bundoora noticed something on the edge of a bush strip beside the tram line. Officers responding to the area found personal belongings consistent with the missing student's description. Within minutes, the location was sealed. Police statements later confirmed the discovery of a body a few meters from the tram stop. The area remained under cordon for the next 36 hours. Detectives from the homicide squad arrived before midday. Investigators mapped the short distance between where she stepped off the tram and where her body was found, which was less than 100 meters. By that afternoon, the missing person report had officially transitioned into a homicide investigation. Detective Inspector Andrew Stubbings told reporters the attack appeared opportunistic and that the victim had likely been followed after leaving the tram. Detectives requested CCTV footage from all surrounding tram stops and commercial buildings within a 1-kilometer radius. That same day, Victoria Police released a description of a person of interest seen near the tram line around midnight. Media bulletins showed cropped stills of the clothing items found at the scene. Officers conducted door-to-door inquiries across the nearby apartment blocks, focusing on residents who used the tram regularly. By the evening of the 16th of January, the case had already drawn national attention. News outlets reported the discovery as part of an ongoing investigation into the death of an exchange student in Melbourne's north. University officials issued a statement confirming that support was being provided to her classmates and that police were coordinating directly with campus security. For investigators, the first 24 hours became a timeline exercise, matching tram data, phone pings, and witness accounts against the final minutes of her route home. Everything pointed to a narrow window between 12:05 and 12:10 a.m., a 5-minute gap in which an ordinary journey had stopped without trace. By the end of that first day, detectives had mapped every movement, every timestamp, and every signal she made before her phone went still. What began as a search for a missing student had already become something else, a forensic puzzle built from 5 silent minutes in the middle of the night. On the evening of January 15, 2019, the exchange student spent several hours in Melbourne's city centre with friends from her language program. According to witness statements, she left the group just before midnight, planning to take the Route 86 tram back to her apartment near La Trobe University. Public transport data, later obtained by investigators, confirmed she boarded the tram at the Bourke Street stop shortly after 12 a.m. Security footage from inside the carriage showed her seated near the middle section, scrolling on her phone and occasionally looking out the window. She appeared calm and alert. The journey from Melbourne's CBD to Bundoora usually took around 50 minutes, Detectives reconstructed the route, stop by stop, matching time-stamped CCTV along the tram corridor. Footage confirmed she remained on board until the Bundoora Polaris stop, arriving at approximately 12:03 a.m. At that same moment, she placed a phone call to her sister overseas. According to telecommunications records cited in court filings, the call connected normally. Within seconds, the sister heard a faint cry and sudden background distortion before the line went silent. For the next several minutes, the phone stayed connected to the network, but showed no movement from the location near the tram stop. When the family member tried calling back, the signal connected again, but no one spoke. University staff later confirmed that the sister, unable to reach her, contacted them before dawn to report concern. By morning, that alert became part of the missing person report logged at the local police station. Detectives reviewing the data later noted that the exchange student had taken the exact same tram route several times each week. Her friends confirmed she often used the Polaris stop because it was well lit and only a short walk from her accommodation. There had been no previous reports of disturbance or assault in that corridor during the preceding months. Investigators obtained tram driver rosters and passenger manifests for that night. No driver reported seeing anyone matching the eventual suspect's description on board, suggesting the encounter likely occurred after she disembarked. GPS analysis of her phone confirmed that the device stopped transmitting movement data at 12:05 a.m., less than 2 minutes after she stepped off the tram. That brief gap became the center of every investigative timeline. A single tram ride, a phone that went silent, and a walk measured in meters, all ending in an absence no one could explain. In the early hours of January 16, 2019, investigators later determined that the exchange student was attacked within minutes of stepping off the Route 86 tram in Bundoora. According to court documents, her phone's movement data ended at 12:05 a.m., near a landscaped strip beside the Polaris shopping center. Forensic analysis placed the assault in that immediate area, a short, tree-lined walkway separating the tram tracks from the shopping complex. The sequence was reconstructed through a combination of phone logs, tram schedules, and forensic mapping. Investigators concluded that a man walking nearby struck her multiple times with a metal pipe, then dragged her body behind a hedge line away from the streetlight. According to the autopsy findings, cited later in court, she suffered severe blunt force head trauma and was SA'd before the attacker attempted to destroy evidence by fire. A charred section of grass and residue from an aerosol spray were located at the scene. At 7 a.m., a passerby noticed smoke-stained shrubs and a shoe lying near the edge of the path. He called emergency services, believing a small fire had been lit overnight. Responding officers quickly realized the area concealed human remains. Within minutes, the scene was sealed, and the homicide squad was notified. Detective Inspector Andrew Stubbings later told media that the location was treated as a primary crime scene from the outset. Uniformed officers expanded the perimeter to include the adjacent tram stop, bus lane, and several retail loading areas. Traffic along Plenty Road was diverted as forensic teams began grid-pattern searches. Evidence photographs captured several key items within 5 meters of the body. A black baseball cap marked 1986, a two-tone gray cotton-on t-shirt, a clear aerosol can believed to contain accelerant, and fragments of burned fabric consistent with clothing material. All items were catalogued, sealed, and transported to the Victoria Police Forensic Services Center for DNA analysis. Forensic specialists used luminol testing to identify blood traces on the concrete edging near the bushes. Investigators noted drag marks extending from the pavement toward the concealed area, suggesting the assault began closer to the tram-line. Soil samples and burned vegetation were collected for chemical testing. By mid-morning, the homicide squad's evidence technicians had completed a full 3D laser scan of the site, recording distances and object placement for later reconstruction. Detectives also began canvassing nearby businesses for CCTV. A camera mounted on a pole outside the shopping complex captured partial movement shortly after midnight. Indistinct shadows, but consistent with two figures entering the area from the direction of the tram stop. According to the preliminary crime scene report, the victim's personal belongings were scattered within a narrow radius. Her handbag and phone were located several meters away, both heavily damaged. The SIM data later helped investigators establish the final signal timestamp, matching the moment the phone stopped moving. Autopsy results completed days later confirmed multiple head injuries from a blunt object, consistent with a metal pipe recovered during searches in a nearby creek. DNA recovered from the body and from the discarded clothing items provided a partial profile that matched a sample already stored in a minor offense database. That link became the first breakthrough in the case. By the afternoon of January 16th, police confirmed publicly that the investigation had shifted from missing person to homicide. News bulletins identified the location only as near the Polaris shopping precinct in Bundoora. Detectives appealed for public assistance, requesting information about anyone seen wearing the distinctive 1986 cap or gray cotton-on shirt. Forensic teams continued processing the area through the night, using floodlights and thermal imaging to ensure no trace evidence was missed. By the time the scene was cleared 36 hours later, investigators had logged more than 300 exhibits and taken soil samples, fabric fibers, and burn residues for lab testing. By the time the final samples were sealed and the scene cleared, investigators had gathered everything they needed to tell the story of what happened in those 7 minutes after midnight. A story written entirely in evidence and marked by silence that never broke again. By January 17, 2019, Victoria police analysts were cross-checking the DNA profile recovered from the crime scene. Within hours, a partial match was confirmed in the national database. The sample corresponded to Cody Herman, a 20-year-old man already known to authorities through minor offenses and community reports in Melbourne's North. Detectives immediately began tracing his recent movements. According to later court filings, Herman had been living between friends' apartments and public parks. In the Bundoora area, surveillance review placed him near the Route 86 corridor several times in the days before the attack. CCTV from a convenience store at Polaris Center, time-stamped 11:57 p.m. on January 15th, showed him wearing a cap identical to the one recovered at the scene. On January 18th, investigators initiated a coordinated search across multiple suburbs. Plainclothes officers monitored tram routes and nearby parks, while forensic teams re-examined rubbish bins and drains within a 500-meter radius of the crime scene. At approximately 11:20 a.m., detectives located Herman near Greensboro Station, less than 10 kilometers away. He was detained without incident and transported to the St. Kilda Road Police Complex for questioning. During initial interview, Herman denied involvement. However, forensic swabs taken after his arrest returned results consistent with DNA traces from the victim and from items seized at the scene. According to the charge sheet filed later that day, police alleged that Herman had struck S.A. and killed the exchange student before attempting to burn evidence. Search warrants executed at several nearby addresses led to the seizure of additional clothing items, including jeans with faint blood traces, later confirmed through DNA testing. A friend of Herman told investigators he had noticed burns on Herman's hand and wrist in the days following the attack. When questioned about the injuries, Herman reportedly said he had been lighting fires to stay warm. Victoria Police publicly announced the arrest that afternoon. Detective Inspector Stubbings confirmed to reporters that forensic evidence had established a clear link between the suspect and the crime scene. He stated that investigators were satisfied the attack was opportunistic rather than pre-planned. Herman was formally charged with murder before the Melbourne Magistrates Court on January 19, 2019. Court documents from the hearing show that no bail application was made. He was remanded in custody to appear before the Supreme Court at a later date. In the following weeks, detectives continued collecting corroborative material, CCTV compilations, witness interviews, and forensic comparisons. A police statement released in February confirmed that all critical exhibits had been processed and that DNA, CCTV, and phone data analysis formed the foundation of the prosecution brief. Public discourse shifted toward safety on late-night transport routes, with state officials promising additional security reviews. By early October, Herman's defense counsel notified the court that their client intended to plead guilty. The announcement ended 9 months of procedural preparation and confirmed that the next phase would move to sentencing. In less than 3 days, a set of DNA traces, 2 items of clothing, and one silent phone had led detectives to their suspect. The search that began with scattered evidence beside a tram line had ended with the quiet click of handcuffs and a city watching as the truth took its first clear shape. When the Supreme Court of Victoria opened its session on October 1st, 2019, the courtroom was silent as the defendant stood to enter his plea. 20-year-old Cody Herman admitted guilt to 2 charges, rape and murder. The plea ended 9 months of preparation, acknowledging the evidence already before the court. According to court transcripts, prosecutors outlined the case with precision. They detailed the timeline reconstructed from phone data, tram surveillance, and DNA analysis. The sequence presented to the court matched the investigative record almost minute by minute, from her tram ride home to the final movement near the Polaris Center. Every forensic exhibit collected in those first 3 days was now part of the Crown's submission. During sentencing submissions, the prosecution described the attack as brutal, opportunistic, and sustained. Prosecutor Patrick Bourke, KC, told the court the act showed a complete disregard for human life and dignity. He noted that Herman had selected a random victim, attacked without provocation, and attempted to destroy evidence by setting fire to the scene. Each point was supported by forensic reports, chemical tests, and DNA results. Herman's defense did not contest the physical evidence. Instead, his barrister presented background material detailing a troubled upbringing, episodes of homelessness, and mental health challenges. Court documents confirmed psychiatric assessments citing major depressive disorder, substance abuse, and traits of personality instability. Defense counsel argued these factors should be considered in mitigation, acknowledging, however, that they did not excuse the crimes. Justice Elizabeth Hollingworth addressed the court with measured tone. She accepted that Herman's background and mental health were relevant, but emphasized that the attack remained one of extreme violence. Her remarks were later published in full by the Supreme Court. She described the crime as unsophisticated and opportunistic, noting that Herman's attempt to conceal the evidence demonstrated utter contempt for his victim's dignity. The judge further observed that the victim had been a young exchange student walking home from a tram, an act that should have been safe in every city. After reviewing psychiatric reports and victim impact statements, the court imposed a total sentence of 36 years, with a non-parole period of 30 years. Justice Hollingworth stated that community protection and deterrence were paramount, and that the offense warranted one of the state's longest sentences for a single perpetrator homicide. Family representatives delivered their statements through court officials. They described the enduring consequences of the crime. The distance, the unanswered calls, and the final moments reconstructed only through evidence. The courtroom remained silent as the victim's father spoke through an interpreter, describing his daughter's hope of building a future through education. Herman showed little visible reaction when the sentence was read. He was escorted from the dock immediately after the judge concluded her remarks. Prosecutors later confirmed outside court that no appeal would be lodged by the defense. The Director of Public Prosecutions did file an appeal seeking a longer term, arguing the sentence was manifestly inadequate. On June 11, 2021, the Court of Appeal dismissed that motion, ruling the sentence fell within range given the offender's mental condition and early plea. The original 36-year term remained for investigators and prosecutors. The courtroom phase closed the evidentiary chain they had built across 9 months, a case proven by timestamps, chemical traces, and digital signals. In the end, justice had been recorded in the same way the crime was first discovered, through data, precision, and silence that carried its own weight. In the years that followed the sentencing, the case of the exchange student in Bundoora remained a defining reference in discussions about public safety across Victoria. It had begun as a local police response to a missing person report and ended as one of the most widely reported homicide investigations in the state's history. According to court archives and police briefings, the case became a formal training model within the Victoria Police Homicide Squad. Detectives used it to demonstrate the value of rapid forensic turnaround, from scene collection to DNA match, as a standard procedure in time-critical investigations. The original case file, containing over 300 exhibits, was stored at the Victoria Police Forensic Centre as a teaching record. In public memory, the incident carried another form of legacy. La Trobe University continued the scholarship founded in her name, offering annual grants to exchange students pursuing education abroad. Recipients often visited the tram stop memorial during orientation, leaving small notes or flowers at the plaque placed near the shelter. For many, it served as both remembrance and reassurance, a signal that her story remained part of the institution's collective conscience. The Polaris Center and surrounding precinct underwent several upgrades in the years after the incident. Local council records show expanded lighting installations, upgraded CCTV coverage, and a dedicated emergency call point near the tram line. Community feedback surveys indicated improved perceptions of safety in the area, though reminders of the case remained visible in the form of annual vigils. In media reporting, the case was frequently cited alongside other incidents that led to legal and infrastructural changes in urban transport policy. Editorials described it as a turning point that redefined accountability across multiple agencies: law enforcement, transit operations, and public works. Government reports released in 2021 included references to immediate response frameworks, directly influenced by the Bundoora investigation timeline. Investigators received commendations for their coordinated response, a recognition that underscored how evidence and timing had defined the case from its first day. Several of those officers later contributed to policy consultations on urban safety design. At the tram stop, the memorial still stands. Each January, students and commuters leave single flowers, not as a ceremony, but as a quiet act of recognition. The plaque remains simple: a name, a year, and a short message about safety and hope. No titles, no description of what happened, just the reminder of a life interrupted during an ordinary walk home. The investigation had long concluded, the sentence long handed down. Yet, in every late tram that passes through Bundoora, the case endures, a record of what evidence revealed and what silence left behind. The case of the exchange student in Bundoora left behind more than evidence and verdicts. It left questions about safety, accountability, and justice itself. After everything that surfaced in court, what do you think? Was the sentence fair, or did it fall short of what justice demanded? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and tell us where you're watching from. If you want to see more real cases told through verified facts and official records, make sure to subscribe to the Crime Insider and turn on notifications. Your support helps us bring more true stories, told exactly as they happened.